Johnny, welcome to the Manufacturing Transform podcast. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
First of all, I do just need to ask, your name is Johnny Goode. Is your middle initial any chance it's B? What's your middle name?
It does not start with a B, unfortunately, and I'm actually the third too. So had 3 opportunities to execute on that one and didn't.
Well, Johnny Goode the third is still a pretty cool name. So again, thank you for being here. So yeah, you and I kind of got connected on this particular thing when you, Emily from Marketing Metal posted a picture of visiting your shop. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, that's fantastic. Sounds like you met her through one of our webinars or newsletter. She's done a couple of workshops with me on the importance of marketing. So it's very cool that you're investing in that for your business. But we're here to talk about a little bit of your ProShop journey. And that starts with telling us about your business, about yourself. Yeah, so let's hear the background and what MSP is.
All right. Well, MSP was founded in 1943 as Marion Screw Products in Marion, Indiana. So it was founded to make tachometers for the war effort. And then it grew in a gentleman's basement to start making, more aviation-based products. And then another family purchased it in the 70s and moved it to Gnawbone, Indiana. And then my dad purchased it in 2002 and then moved it to where we currently reside in Bloomington, Indiana. Since he purchased it, he bought a lot more product lines. So our core products are avionic instrument cases, and that entails, the glass, the bezel, and the case itself, avionic switch guards, cooling ducts, and a lot of pretty much things that you'd be found in the cockpit of almost every commercial aircraft. And then we're located about 30 minutes north of Naval Surface Warfare Station Crane. So a big part of our business is supporting their efforts, as well as other defense industries. So about half of our business is core product, of which we have FAA PMA authority on. So it's nice that we're not really competing against other companies for those. And then the other half is tied to build to print from our other customers. I joined the company in 2020. My background prior to this was I came from being a narcotics detective and being on SWAT to going into this industry. So COVID was a unique time, and especially in law enforcement as well. And then my first son was on his way, so I started trying to look at things on a more long-term basis, and buying dope and guns at 2 a.m. didn't seem like a fun experience with the newborn. So I started trying to create a lifestyle that would be better, not just for myself, but my family as well.
Wow. So you were like undercover?
Yeah, I did about 3 years of, controlled buys and for narcotics and firearms.
Holy cow. It's only like things from the movies or TV shows. But I guess that's
Yeah.
real life for some people.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. So your dad is still active in the business, it sounds like?
He's a little bit. He's retired, somewhat semi-retired. He lives in Florida, and then he comes up here once or twice a quarter.
Nice.
The colder quarters usually once a quarter, but when it's a little bit nicer, it's less humid up here than it is in southern Florida. So
Yeah,
and then he comes and visits my kids too. So
of course. Well, very cool. Wow, that's quite a history. Designed originally for supporting the war effort.
yeah.
That is very cool. That is quite a legacy you're continuing and building on. So yeah, and I did not know the whole PMA thing. Yeah, that's a well diversified, very interesting business you guys got going there. So
Thank you.
so tell me what you guys were doing prior to choosing ProShop, and why did you decide you needed something new? What wasn't working well enough? Yeah, anything about that?
So when I came on in 2020, they were using a system called Evo, and can't really say many positive things about it. But what I disliked most about it is none of the modules seemed to talk to one another. So it's like everything was so siloed and required so much, manpower to do data entry, and like purchasing was pretty much all people typing in everything, and every everything had a part number, and it was super inefficient and wasn't super popular by coming in, as the boss's son in a time of COVID where we had furloughed and people. And then the first one of the biggest action items I did was tell them that the software stunk and that I was going to look for a new provider. So I did some research and I really liked ProShop. I can't recall exactly how I had come across ProShop. I think it might have just been through internet searches at the time. Um, Spoke with the sales rep from ProShop and um, talked for a while. And what I liked most about ProShop is your guys' foundation seemed very similar to how our business was at the time too. Kind of smaller machine shop, largely focused on supporting Boeing, and so it seemed. And we were already AS9100, but it just seemed like the best fit than any other software. And the implementation was, I think, a lot easier because we had Michael Headwood.
Yep. Michael's legendary.
Yeah. Um, so I think it worked well with my people because it was, someone that had a manufacturing background, not just someone that works at a software company going through the process. And uh, I think that there were a few of the management team that had been here, for over 10 years that were pretty resistant to change, not because of any inadequacies with ProShop. They knew how Evo worked better than anybody else. And at the time, my dad and I really did not know how Evo worked well. And, um, later find out that a lot of things were being hidden very easily in the old system that weren't being hidden so well in ProShop. So we were able to find a plethora of inefficiencies that were in our old system that we would have never caught had we not switched ERP systems.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I've heard about. I mean, I've heard that anecdote before that ProShop brings a level of transparency and visibility to like the whole team that just they didn't have in their old systems. So,
Yeah.
um, sounds like those were turned out to be important to you.
But yes, very.
Um, can you share any anecdotes? Without giving too much away, of the kind of things that you discovered that help the business.
Yes, I think, there's a plethora. I mean, I could probably fill up this entire time slot talking about different ones, but I think the one of the things I like most is the how the purchasing works, and it's like there's so much data driving it, but it reduced almost, 2 people doing purchasing full time
Whoa,
to I do all the purchasing now, and it maybe takes me 4 hours a week, and I'm having the people in the operations actually tell this what they when they want the dates, our quoting and estimating is putting in the quote, so it just makes things flow better. And we were having our operations would take, sometimes multiple weeks between when we got a PO to when it was material was here and the work order was on the floor. And now that happens in less than 48 hours generally. Now there's always some types of material that sometimes have longer lead times, but generally it's ordered within 24 hours of receiving the award.
wow. So, are you saying purchasing was a two-person full-time job and now it's 4 hours a week for you?
Yes.
Wow. Did so just going back, one of the things that sounds like you dealt with and almost every single company does is change management and people being resistant or concerned about their jobs or their, whatever, or just not liking change, even if their jobs are very secure. Did you have any turnover related to this implementation?
No, we did not have any turnover. I think we repurposed or had people take on different tasks or things that were better use of their time than just data entry, really. I think there was a huge that perception like, oh, if my job's only 4 hours, I'm going to be fired. I think that perception drove a lot of those. And there was a couple people here that I think had the mindset, if I'm the only one that knows how to do this, I'm extremely valuable. And one thing I learned in the military, and I think the Army does a good job of, is you're always trying to train the person below you how to do your job, so that if something happens or if you get promoted, then they're able to execute without any major setbacks. And that's what I've tried to ingrain here. It's like if you want to be promoted or do more, you have to train the people below you to do your job. Whereas I think the older mindset was, well, I'm valuable if no one else knows how to do that. And I think after 4 or 5 years, I've gotten rid of that culture. But just had to use a little bit of force to get there.
Yeah, that is a very common uh, thing. I think people just being concerned about the safety of their jobs, but like you said, in the bigger picture, the company's gonna be more successful. The people will have more opportunities to do probably more interesting, valuable things, and if they can let go of that concept that
Yeah.
they're just like holding on to their little tiny corner of the business and protecting it. So
Yeah, I think manufacturing can have enough challenges, outside of your control, so it's like, why not try to maximize, the internal controls so that we don't have any issues inside, and then, if something arises with a customer or supplier or something that we really have little influence, we can now dedicate a team to it rather than always putting out internal fires that were self-induced.
yeah, that is really well said. And how long had they been using Evo?
I think it had been, at least 10 years, but if not, close to 20, between 10 and 20 years.
Oh wow,
So
okay,
there was a ton
that's
of data in there,
no
and,
kidding.
I wanted to do kind of an organic, like, typing things in to ProShop as orders came in and stuff. Because I was like, "I know there's a ton of bad data in that old system. The last thing I wanted to do was a big CSV upload and just have the same garbage in that I had in the old one."
Did you do any amount of bulk import while cleaning it up in the interim stage?
So, I think as we came towards the end of the implementation year, part numbers that had a demand for or raw materials that were physically on the shelf, I did uploads of those.
Got it.
Um, but very limited. And even after that, I haven't had to do much CSV uploads. I think we do a ton of CSV uploads now for like our dim tagging and things of that nature. But as far as just pulling that raw data, I think I did two or three different times. We did it with our contacts, though.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense. Wow. Besides Evo, I imagine this is pretty common that there's other spreadsheets and little mini databases and other things running different parts and keeping track of different
yeah.
things. Did you guys have a bunch of that kind of stuff too?
So I think they had one spreadsheet, and we just recently phased this out for like first piece inspections. So that was just like an Excel sheet that they would take some of the quality, type in their time in, and so we eliminated that. We had I cannot unfortunately recall the software off the top of my head, but something to keep track of the gauging and equipment, which we use
Mhm.
ProShop equipment module for that. We replaced one of our we use Discus instead of NetInspect because it works better with ProShop. No,
Mhm.
um, not
IQ, yeah.
NetInspect. I can't recall the old software, but and there was a bunch of Excel sheets that they were using before, um, and just straight PDF documents that they were printing off and using. So, and it's made all of our work orders live. Instead of printing off a work order and have it get lost on the floor, and then you're not in a great position when you get audited. And then we've used either tablets or laptops or computers for every employee. So it's been nice to have everything, like, if someone updates something, it's updated in real time.
Got it. And I know you said before we hit record, but did you say yet how many employees you have in the company today?
We have, about 34 employees, of which, we have 2 interns and 2 apprentices, and then, my dad and our CFO are more part-time employees.
Got it. Okay. Wow. Very cool. So, besides the obvious losing of paper travelers, what other impacts have you seen on going paperless or challenges you overcame or things you had to make sure were, put in place to make sure that went well?
So, one thing I kinda had to compromise on, is they still liked having that work order look better than, I think, the box label, so they still print off the first page of the work order, and that's what travels with the parts, but they still use the computers and tablets for inputting everything. They're not handwriting it on there. But I think that just getting people away from the paper triggering their next step to using, the dashboards and what the system's triggering you. And I think it took a little bit of time to have like complete faith in the system that like
Sure.
it's going to do it for you. So there was a little bit of testing on that. And unfortunately, at the beginning, I think people weren't um, truly utilizing it the way it was designed. They were trying to use ProShop the way that Evo worked, and I was like, "No, gotta use it the way it's designed." And what's nice about ProShop is it's almost getting a business model with a software because it kind of outlines how you're supposed to run things. How when you receive an order in, or even from the quoting process. So we kind of changed our processes to align better with how ProShop worked, um,
Mm.
and it's just I think made our processes so much more efficient.
Can you share any specific anecdotes of that efficiency gain?
Yeah, so I can think of about like I'll give a couple different examples that follow this similar process. So I mentioned that when an order is received, it's being executed on the floor, within that week. Sometimes in a couple of days, depending on material. But before we get a ton of forecasts from some of our customers, sometimes going out 2 years. But what was not being done very well is building, like quarterly runs for stock. So we get, between 1 to 25 drop-in orders a day from our customers. And there'd be times where it's like, "Oh, we don't have this subcomponent. Run to a machine. We got to get this going now." And it was super disruptive. So they were doing the same part, setting it up one day, breaking it down, and then the next week doing that same part. So starting last June, after I had kind of up our processes, we started doing quarterly or biannually releases for those parts. So buy a ton, and most of the parts have the same setup too, or very little modification. So they started doing that, and they ran through it so much quicker than we thought. We thought we were giving them like 2 months of work, and it was in like 2 weeks. They're like, "All right, ready to do the next one." I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe we managed that." But what happened was, we had a customer with an urgent DoD need come to us, and we're like, "Hey, somebody on our team dropped the ball. This should have been ordered a while ago, but we need to order this now, but we need it in 4 weeks." And it had outside processing and paint operations because we do a lot of paint internally as well.
Sure.
Um, so we were able to deliver them ahead of schedule on all of those. And then at the end of December, the DoD directly came to us with a kind of a mission critical defense project. And I think all of the other competitors were, 12 to 18 weeks. And because we built all these forecasted and had stock for these drop in orders, we had open machining time. And it was 3 weeks with the part having almost 12 hours of runtime, and they wanted 25 of them. So,
Yeah.
and internally too, we've made a lot of investments in our machinery, so palletizing and automation as well. So that factored with ProShop, we're now able to take these projects that no one wants to touch because of the time constraints and able to get them to them even earlier. And this last one has had a lot of eyes on it from the DoD, and so we've created a pretty good reputation on this. And now there's multiple phases to this project, and they're like, just give all the phases to this company. So that's been pretty cool too.
That sounds
And,
really exciting.
I think that's what I like is that our foundations are really, we started supporting the war effort in World War II, but we still have a big presence in supporting the warfighter. And there's been a couple projects that we've worked on that I was the end user in the Army using that same product or
Yeah.
service. So it's been really cool. And then anytime we can show what it's going to, we try to do so in the note section on the work orders.
Hmm.
So, like, on some of our parts that go on, like, a Chinook, I always have it there, and the guys love knowing that, like, they're supporting the warfighter and take a little bit of pride on that.
That is super cool. Yeah. Yeah, you're right about that. When people understand the end
Yep.
product they're serving, it always helps, and especially and it's something like that. I'm sure it seems very meaningful to them.
Oh, yeah.
Very
Yeah, our
cool.
workforce is very pro-American and just
Yeah,
anything we're helping the DoD with, they take great pride in.
yeah, that's very cool. Well, I love that we've yeah helped you strategically get ahead of those orders and build capacity and do things better. You mentioned that previously it could be a couple of weeks before a work order or material hit the floor. Can you just go into a little more detail about sort of how lead time has been cut out of that process?
Yeah, so that's because, paper was kind of how it queued the next stuff. There'd be bottlenecks of, files on people's desks of just like, "Oh, I won't get it done today," and tomorrow turns into 4 weeks, naturally. And so that happened so many steps along the process where it's like, Oh, I got to build the routing. Take a couple weeks. Oh, I got to get new quotes for the material because everything the estimator's done are, invalid. And especially during COVID, the quote times, it's like you don't order within 5 days, get another quote. It's so
Mhm.
volatile. So then purchasing had to, go through that process. So I had to add another week. And then let's just say you get material in a couple of times, then they had to they had this big section of the company where all the work orders were, so it wasn't, readily available of which one, and then matching the receiving inspection and trying to find the work orders. I mean, just a plethora of inefficiencies that are just, as you know, ProShop kinda does for you, and, one of the features I really like is that bomb update every night. It's so nice to, see because we have so many of the same parts that we're doing over and over again. It's nice to see, "Oh, we pulled stock and fulfilled this drop-in, but now we have an order in 2027 that we're gonna be deficient on." And then we use the, minimal reorder point, so now we're queuing our internal build to print or built to
Stock.
inventory to go. So because we have orders probably going out to 2027, 2028 now based on contract. So it's really our on-time delivery has gotten significantly better, because of ProShop.
Do you have any numbers to share?
So there were times where we were, exceeding in the high 90s in Evo, but it was during COVID when we had very little orders, so it was real easy there. But once we started getting busy before and halfway during the implementation, we were in, probably the 83 to 84%, and now we're executing between 97 and 99% on-time delivery. So the usually the biggest driver is a supplier or raw material that, for some unforeseen reason gets pushed out weeks past when it was supposed to be here. And a lot of the most common raw material, I think, is glass. We do a lot of specialized glass with finishing, and every now and again, it just the whole lot gets damaged some point before it even gets to us, and they have to restart the process. So that's been the biggest reason for our late orders.
So you're machining glass?
We're assembling glass, so about half of our business is all assembly. So we assemble the
Okay.
glass to the bezel using, epoxy solder, and then it's painted, then attached to a case, painted, and, um, but we buy a lot of glass.
Are those for
It's
cockpit?
for Yeah, so it holds the actual instrument itself. So we'll send the assembly, and then the integrators will put the instrument inside of there and attach it to the cockpit.
Cool. Yeah, at our shop, ProCNC, probably a good third of our business was like the back housings of cockpit display
Okay,
panels. Um, and in fact, people probably aren't watching this or listening to it, but we made tons of parts like this, right?
that's
And
funny.
bigger back housings, and yeah, I mean, there's a few other on my shelf right there.
Yeah, we do a few of the back housings, but I would be interested to see if any of the front housings attach to your guys' back housings.
I mean, in full candor, that we did work for Corey Electronics a
Yep,
ton, for IDD Aerospace, which became Zodiac.
yep,
So those maybe are, I don't know if those
yep,
are.
those are some of ours as well. So that's
Oh,
funny.
fun. That's small world. Um, cool. Well, those are some incredible improvements, and it just music to my ears. Uh,
Yeah, so that's where I use the CSV upload most on a regular basis outside of quality is every at the end of every month I have a query based up in our part level in work order. So it runs our core product and contract pricing. So I have one sheet that says what's in process, what's in inventory. And so I just export those and then cross-reference it with our forecast. And then all of the deficiencies is what I build up on. So I do every month I'm looking out, and that's looking out 6 to 9 months down the road. So we're so far ahead now, which is nice. Instead of being reactive, we could be proactive. And the best case study is those DoD and defense projects that just they needed it quick and we had the time to do it. And that's with running one shift. I mean, it's not even like I'm asking a night shift to come in, no overtime to justify that either. Just float into our normal production.
wow, that's really cool. That is fantastic. Do you remember once you really got into it, like a feature that just stood out, like, holy cow, this is gonna just be game changing for us?
I think it's just that, like, everything is hyperlinked. Like, I could click on something because that was what I hated about the other one. I'd see something and I'm like, "Okay, write this down, go into this other module," and I couldn't even, like, barely copy and paste out of the other system, so being able to literally go from estimate all the way to, an invoice, just with anything that's blue being able to click on, and if I wanted to see, like, customer contact information, just click it. I think how you can just drive through ProShop so quickly, and I was like, "This is gonna be a game changer," and then when I started looking at the, like, QMS side of it, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna audits are gonna be easy for this," and two, like, one thing we would have auditors do is they'd just pull up, like, a work order and try to find the person and signature, and they're like, "What does this say?" And I like how everything's timestamped, person, equipment, and there was always this perception that, like, audits were, like, the worst thing coming, and, now it's like, it's no issue. Usually the auditors are like, "Alright, I thought this was gonna take longer," but, our l we just had a change in auditors, and, I think we're the 4th company that this auditors use that use ProShop, and right when we walked in and he saw that we use ProShop, it's almost like, "Oh, this is gonna be easy," and I've always had the percept or thought that, like, an auditor kinda makes up their decision on how well the audit's gonna go, in the first minute being inside of a business.
Yeah, I've heard and kind of understand that sentiment for sure. Wow, 4 other that is pretty cool. We must be getting some critical mass here, so
Yeah.
that's pretty neat.
What has
Um,
been pretty cool is that, I don't know if you're familiar with this company called Cloud NC. They have a product called
yeah,
Canvases.
yeah,
So Daniel was our sales rep at, uh,
yes,
ProShop, and
of
then we
course.
use Canvases also, and I saw he now works for them.
Yes, he did go move over there, and yeah, hope he's loving it. It's a very cool product, neat company.
Yeah.
So those have sounds like those audits have been your AS, like
Yep.
recertification audits?
Yep. So I think
Um,
we've done, a recert and 2 surveillance
okay,
audits, and then this next one we're recertifying again at the end of this year.
got it. So we have this concept that we call the zero prep audit. Do you feel like you have zero prep audits?
I do now. I think before the beginning, there was a couple. Or like I was like, "Just double check this," and it was just, specifically on the supplier dashboard, they were not, they weren't monitoring really the suppliers on that side, when they're late, and I was like, "Well, were they late, or did they send a confirmation with a date and no one changed it in the system and they got marked late?" So, after we improved that process, and then, we recently did that, like, kind of QMS 2.0 overlay,
Mhm.
so we did have to kinda modify some of the paragraphs and stuff before that, but that was part of that process, not because of an audit, but, I have very little stress of an audit coming in, and I've always told my staff, I was like, "We're gonna lose customers or revenue before we fail an audit." Like, usually I that's my personal opinion that your customers are gonna start giving you signs that your process is messed up before an auditor does.
Mhm. There's some wisdom in that. Yeah, very interesting. Um, yeah, because I guess the audit is somewhat a trailing indicator, right?
Yeah,
I mean, in some
yep,
ways, the processes you're putting in place are the leading part, but yeah, it's the performance to your customers that really where the rubber hits the road.
yeah.
I like the way you phrase that. That's good. Have you had customer audits?
We've had a few. We've had a couple of the defense ones. Boeing has come out, and a couple other customers. And I think the ones that were not familiar with ProShop were pretty impressed with how we could just. We're like, well, where's that gauge? And we had. We haven't put pictures of all of them in there, but we could just show when it went out to calibration, all the details, who used it, how often it's been used, and they really liked that part
That's
of
super
it.
cool. That's super cool. Do you feel like that helps in the confidence that that customer has with you as a supplier?
I think so. I think that when we're more stringent sometimes on ourselves than what the customer is requiring, I think it gives them a little bit more peace of mind. And then with some of our customers, just being able to give status a lot quicker because, they can just pull up the customer PO and see the work order. Oh, it's in this op and kind of get either with somebody or look and give a loose estimate of when it's going to be done.
Mhm.
So
Right.
we've been able to give feedback to customers, sometimes instantly over the phone or in a short response period. So when sometimes it might take a day or two.
Got it. So I'm curious to ask about your PMA parts, and most of our customers are contract manufacturers, although not all. And in fact, the very first customer ever, besides our own shop, is an OEM, right,
Okay.
of aerospace hardware. So they design and build and stock and sell their own products to Boeing and all those OEMs. So in some ways, it's quite fitting. But I remember, our shop doing work for some companies that had PMA on lots of different parts, and I always thought it was pretty cool how that all worked. But yeah, how has that side of your business worked with ProShop?
I'd say, I mean, it works. It's probably the easiest one because the parts are really never changing, or like they're rarely a rev change. I think our last one on most of our PMA was 2002 when we changed it from like MSP to MSP Aviation Inc. We traded the legal name. So we had to update the drawings, and then we purchased some of the product line. So we took it from like a Dexter Wilson to MSP. So that's really the only time, but they flow pretty easily. Um, I think it's nice for us to see usage and being able to forecast because we you can export all that data out of ProShop, and especially now that it seems like more. God, is it? I can't think of. Is it ADS out or what's the? Oh, that's flying how to get information out of like ProShop, not through like downloading it, but where it's
Oh, the
talking
API.
to out. Yeah, API. Thank you. I was spacing on that, but the API out and API in, I think is going to be a huge game changer because we're trying to build almost our own internal AI network that's going to be able to do like all of those Excel things I'm doing manually. I'm going to just have AI being able to do it, and um,
Super cool.
yeah, I'm really pumped about that. So, like and then, um, using that Power BI function to have customizable dashboards is really cool too.
Yeah, yeah, that is neat. So how has well, I guess maybe before I get to that question, the folks that were really kind of hesitant about the change, how did it end up with them? Are they fans now? Are they enjoying their new
Yeah, so I
roles? Oh,
so when we were going through the implementation, and it was 2 individuals that were kind of resistant, but I made one of them loved going to IMTS, so I made him go to your guys' happy hour like 2.5 years ago now.
hmm.
And I was just beating it down his throat, and then it finally, like, it was a big OEM that came here for a visit, and in a meeting, he was like, "I'm so glad we went to ProShop. It's been so easy to go through this." And I was like, "Only took me 2 years, but I knew you'd say that." So they're, call it drinking the Kool-Aid. They're drinking the Kool-Aid now, but it just, uh I think it was more fear of the unknown than anything. Like, I know how this system works so well, we don't have any issues, and then they were just and probably also not a ton of faith in me being a young detective coming into a manufacturing thing, telling them their software is garbage and that I'm gonna put new software in because I know better. So, internally, I could have probably done a little bit better on bringing them into the decision making and some buy-in instead of forcing it. But
Yeah.
I don't regret the decision. I just think I could have done it a little bit more delicately.
I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, the clients that we see that have the smoothest time overall are definitely the ones that involved their leadership team at the very least in demos and the sales process, and really getting that buy-in early, so they felt comfortable and like it was going to be a good change, even if it was going to be hard or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I mean, I think I did about 95% of all the implementation stuff myself, so it was
got it.
I reaped the not doing the buy-in, but from talking to a couple other, pro shop customers, it seems that if there is gonna be resistant, it's at the management level. It's not usually the guys on the floor or the owners, it's usually the people that are managing the, certain processes, and I think it really is just, like, fear of the unknown, and they're like, "No, it can't be that good," or whatnot, but
Well, just the fact that you said the old system is working fine, there's no problems, but yet you just, talked about how you're saving weeks of time and lead time because of paper piling places. And I guess that's just an inherent thing that comes along with a paper-based system or whatever,
Yeah,
you know.
and we had the saying on SWAT, "Don't confuse good luck with good tactics." So anytime someone says, "Oh, we've never had an issue," and I was like, "That doesn't mean you're doing the right things, it just mean you got lucky." Could have
Yeah,
been just been getting lucky for 10 years, but, and I think they passed so many audits because it was so difficult to show stuff, and that's another system. They had all of that QMS stuff. Every single, like, substandard was its own Word document. So there was like 100 different Word documents that they would have to go back and forth instead of just one quality manual. I remember trying to compare the 2 different quality manuals, and it looked comically like it was like having a pamphlet next to the Bible on, like, what ProShop's quality manual was to, like, what they had in place before.
that's funny. Yeah. Well, that's the most common type of QMS out there. It's just a
Yeah.
bunch of Word documents and PDF files that are all in a folder system on the network,
And
right?
then each document has its own second document that was like, "This is the rev, this is what was changed," and stuff, and so it's like you had 2 documents for every little thing just on rev change control.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you guys get your AS9100?
I think it was in 2006.
Okay, so quite a long time ago. That was actually the year that ProCNC got its AS9100. We got
Okay.
ISO in 2004 and AS in 2006.
I think
And
we
it was
did them both in the same year, if I'm
okay.
not, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, we did one and then the other. But yeah, it was that exact time frame where we built all the QMS modules because we had an ISO consultant, an AS, consultant come helping us. And they were like, "Yeah, here's some word templates that you can use." And we were like, "What the heck?" We could just already envision how terrible that was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, "No, we'll just build a bunch of QMS modules." And I remember her thinking, like, or sharing with us, like, yeah, she was pretty skeptical that we were going to be able to do that. Um, but sure enough, Matt busted it out, and they turned into these modules. So, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So,
Y
I imagine you've worked with Kelly on our team then?
Yep.
Let's talk
Yep.
about Kelly for a second.
Okay.
How, yeah, what's that been like? How was it helpful to you? And especially going from the 1.0 to the 2.0?
So she's been extremely helpful. I think I typed it in one of your guys's, webinars one time, but we had an audit and they didn't like one of our goals, how it was written. They're like, "How can that be a goal? Because it wasn't really measurable." And, Kelly hopped on we called her, and she was, like, changing it while we were sitting in her in the room with the audit, so we had 0 findings. That was gonna be the only one, but she fixed the way it looked, and,
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
but she's been really helpful working with our quality manager, and just it's more been a lot of little things. I think building out like a custom link for the process development because that was one thing we could never really show good record of. It's like what process improvements have you had
Mhm.
throughout the year? So we have that on
Sure.
the QMS 2.0 thing where it's like we just click the link and it shows all the process through the process dev that
Yeah.
people have put in.
So for those that don't know what process dev means, can you describe a little bit about what it is and how you use it?
So we use it. So usually the first step is, an operator seeing some sort of inefficiency in the process. So there might be a disconnect between when it was estimated to how it's being executed, or the setup may have been inefficient. So I usually have them looking for inefficiency. So let's just say they saw something that was quoted as 3 setups and they could do it in 2 setups on the 5 axis. So they'll put in a note like, "Okay," because we usually have the programs locked down so that very few people can edit them. So
Sure.
usually like an approval process, but sometimes it'd be like, or just like the hardware during the setup, like this was garbage, get better hardware for next time. And they have to do very little work for that process. It's usually going to the operations. And then from there, a small team usually gets together and tries to figure out a solution. And then once that's solutions tested, they update the part level to reflect those new changes. And then the next time a work order comes, it has a new process built into it. And and everything in ProShop is traceable. You can go through the weeds in the edit log, or you can, click through different revs, and it's real easy to show how things are changed. But um, every now and again, I try to go on the floor and work like half a shift with the guys, and it's incredible, like, how many good ideas just come from the people that are doing the job, and that's what I like about that, process dev is you now give them a something that they can input it. They can also see, like, is someone actually doing something about it? Because I mean, some shops have those comment boxes where they drop things in there, but there's not a lot of faith that it's actually being, read or whatnot. But I think if you have a team that wants to improve and you can actually make those improvements happen, it just makes them more innovative and more willing to be innovative.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when they see the improvements being made, they're
Yeah,
like, "Wow, that was my idea." Now they're doing it that
yeah,
way. Yeah, that's super cool. What impact has ProShop had on you in terms of your working hours or working from home part time or just the stress level? Or I mean, I guess you didn't exist that long in the old system before you
yeah.
said, "No, we're getting rid of this darn thing."
Well, so before we would have to use like a VPN and it was super dicey if you were not, in the same city. It just was terrible. And then we've been able to kind of, and even while maintaining our CMMC kind of compliance levels, I can pretty much access ProShop or any of our systems anywhere in the world that has an internet connection, which has been nice. But I I like being in the office. If I really wanted to, I could probably work from home. But my hardest part about working from home is my family looking at me working while I'm at home. It's like
Yes.
so, but when I'm on the road or traveling to a customer or show or whatnot, I'm still able to pretty much do everything from my laptop in a hotel room, and um, we're in we're in a automating even more and more things within ProShop or plugins that talk with ProShop. So it's becoming easier and easier. And then now, when I leave the company, if I want to go, visit a customer for 2 days, I feel like I can come back in and not spend a week and a half to catch up just for missing those 2 days. So it's able for me to work on the business outside of the business a lot easier and a lot less stressful.
Mm. Yeah, you said work on the business.
Yes.
So sounds like you do both. You work in it because like you do purchasing
Yep.
4 hours a week, but you're also working on it.
Yep. And I mean, the purchasing is kind of a short term thing. I really wanted to understand it, but that's where I think the biggest difference is my dad like just had so much faith in the management team where I wanted to know how every single thing worked. And now it's nice to be the person that knows the most on ProShop and like I have some pretty sweet custom queries and always getting those set up. But I just wanted to know how everything worked. And I saw, our purchasing numbers just seemed excessive to me. So that's why I took it over and I was like, oh, they're just not using it the way it should be. They're over purchasing and now we're putting cash on the shelves for no reason. So it's worked out really well with me doing it for the 4. That's the only reason I've kinda held on to it for a while, but the rest of my team is trained. So if I, go on vacation or sick or stuff, they're more than capable of doing the same thing I am.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's smart to really understand a process so you can make improvements to it, get it dialed in, and then train and hand off to someone
Yeah.
else that can.
And I'd put myself through the internal AS9100, auditors course too. So, because I wanted to see, like, what is an AS9100 standard and what is just something that we're handcuffing ourselves because we've always done it that way. So it was nice to be able to shed a ton of things that we didn't have to do. We just some person had thought it was a good idea 20 years ago and no one ever said anything different.
Wow, that's insightful. That's can you think of an anecdote of something that you used to do that you realized was not part of the standard?
It was like for one customer, they just put like a 100% inspection on so many different things. Even when there was no rejects ever in like that history, like they just had labeled so many. That's just one example, but there was a lot of like just way conservative approaches on things. And now it's like if we have a return, sometimes we'll implement 100% inspection, but there is a timeline of how to work it down, how to create a process that's reliable enough where you don't need 100% inspection. Now, there's like a one or two of our parts that are just so we have a customer that's real nitpicky on the cosmetics of it, so we do like 100% cosmetic and inspection, but
Yeah,
uh, it's a fraction of what it used to be.
got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any sense of an ROI on ProShop?
It's hard to give like a giant generalized version, but I would say that we can't capture the ROI is because we haven't, like, eliminated positions, but I think, we saw, almost a 50% increase in revenue during this last year, and it was kind of like our first year of really executing on ProShop, and we only had to staff up for direct labor, so we didn't have to staff up, a purchasing department, customer service. So I think the ROI is it allows you to scale up, and if you have automation on your machines, that's great. But if like our assembly department is just it's so difficult to automate that. So that's really the only positions we had to add. So we added two positions with 50% increase in revenue. So our revenue went up 50% and our expenses went up 1.3%.
Okay. That's a nice concise statement.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very cool.
Yeah. And then our net income went up, a ton because of that. So
Yeah, that, I can imagine. That's a lovely place to be. What would you tell another shop owner that's that's in a similar type of business? Maybe not the PMA part, but maybe that too. But contract manufacturing that is considering ERP research or system that seems to be working okay, but it's kind of had some of the same constraints maybe as what you dealt with prior. What would you tell them about it?
so actually I've just introduced one of my a customer or a company I've been talking to for a while to one of the pro shop reps, but I think it just has it's very customizable, um, from look to function, but while still having a pretty solid base. But I think the amount of data that you can use for pro shop for making decisions is incredible. Like there's so many times that there's such a big difference between what the system's doing and how you can interpret that data. So, um, like so many companies have these ERP systems or stuff, but it's like, what's your yearly usage? Um, and what's your, like, was that work order profitable? What was the labor attached to it? Like, why did you buy extra material? It's, oh, because we had an NCR attached to that work order. It's like everything is connected where it's so easy to diagnose and make, almost live real time decisions in the like rather than waiting a month. Because so many people look at their ERP system after they close out the month and then they'll go back. But it's like you can look at the shop and period progress in real time almost on a daily basis. So you can see where people are attributing their labor. So are you spending 30% of your workforce's time in reworks or setup? Or you could start just like identifying the areas that really need work.
Mm. So do you feel like it's a real tool to to multiply your process improvement,
Yeah, so I
initiatives?
marketed it as a force multiplier. So it's like it takes what I could do in 40 hours and like now I can do way more than I could have done in our old system. Like it would have taken like 3 or 4 of me to do what I do now in a weekly basis. So people that are worried and I find that like AI cobots has the same kind of people are like, "Oh, I'm going to lose my job." It's like, "No, it's multiplying what you can do." So now we can start scaling up, we can make more money, we can give back more to our employees, and we can all live more comfortable lifestyle because we have these force multipliers. I was like, I'm not trying to eliminate anyone's job. Now, if you're doing terrible and it's a performance reason, absolutely, but I'm not going to eliminate a job because I made a more efficient way of it. We'll have you do something that's a better use of your time. And often the things that we're automating are the things they hated doing anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like
Yeah, we
who really wants to do data entry 40 hours a week? Like I'm sure there are some people, but it's like
yeah. Yeah. Well, there was a story of a pretty good sized shop down in Texas, I think about 70 or 80 people. And the woman that did all the document packages for their orders, AS9102s and all that
yeah.
stuff, it was a full time job. She did that 40 hours a week. And when apparently because we did a case study with them, and the president, came into her office at one point, and I think he said she was crying and was like just scared to death that she was going to lose her job when she learned about the like create a document package button.
Yeah, I will yeah.
But instead, she was promoted to a full quality engineer, started doing much more interesting value added things. And that paperwork pushing just became, almost completely automated.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that feature too for us, like it was someone hand jamming into Excel like the AS9102 and like taking like it took them weeks sometimes to get like a 200 character part, and we would have orders being late. They were done, a week or 2 ahead of schedule, but it took them, like, weeks to get a first article done, and now it's like I think the first time, our shipping partner was like, "Well, can't ship it, there's not a first article." I was like, "Click on the first article, click, combine it in PDF," and they're like, "Oh." They ever since then, are pretty pumped about it. I'm like, "You don't need
That's
to wait on quality, it's done." We do pretty much everything we do, we did tag every part, put it in every single part has an AS9102 form, so it's not like and you can flag, first article required, but we just run everything the same all the time.
sure. Yeah. So you said, maybe we can talk about that for a second. You said that, ProShop being kind of a process built into software, you changed some of the things that you did. Did you always like prepare your quality plan up at the beginning? Or how did some of those, maybe just a few anecdotes of how things have changed just in the process?
So for the process, especially first articles, it's like they didn't realize they were having to do a first article sometimes until the part was about ready to ship. So it's like they weren't, then I have to go back and dim tag, find what it was, cluster. I was like, how have you guys been operating for this long? But quality would be complaining like, "Oh, we had to get special gauging, and we didn't know about it when the job was coming around," but then when they were consulted, they wouldn't offer any feedback. Now with the pre-processing checklist, and then um, I have that, I put when operations finishes their job, I have, like, them put 25% in planning, and then I made a dashboard where it says if it's 25%, now it's on quality to finish the pre-processing checklist so that everyone can see what they have on their plate, and now it's like we rarely have any of those issues, and then we also sometimes catch things before they hit the machine rather than, catching it way after the fact. Like, the earlier you can catch an issue, the cheaper it is for everybody involved.
Yeah. Like a special thread gauge or something that,
That or even, like, a part that had a new rev change that just, maybe in the old system woulda just ran through as the previous rev, and so
mm, wow, that's awesome. So, has 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 this is a big question, but do you feel like ProShop has helped change the culture of the business?
I think so too. I think we've had so many changes within the organization from, me taking over the president role for my dad to putting new tech into the company and then the ERP system and a couple other softwares that we're using. I think all together they've had a huge impact. But ProShop was really the first start to it because that was the first kind of purchase I made to improve our processes. Once people started seeing the benefit, like because the one hang up that the operators and programmers didn't like was uh, I made them put in the G code programming tool list and work instructions for every job, and they're like, "This is such a this we don't need to do this." But then they had a repeat job come around, and like the intern was able to set, or like an entry level person was able to set it up rather than taking their time, and then they saw it and they're like, "Okay, now I see what you're talking about." But I think it has it's I think we just have this innovative kind of culture mindset where it's like anytime they're looking at an inefficiency, they're working on fixing it rather than just like, oh, it's always been this way and we're always going to do it this inefficient way because that's what they decided and they have a much better voice to influence positive change.
And that's a new thing. It's
Yeah,
really since
that's new
ProShop.
resulted from ProShop. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty huge. That's fantastic. Yeah, there's that, we all know, the what do they call it? The eighth wonder of the world, the power of compound interest, right?
Yeah.
That increasing curve. And I'm like, if you can increase the curve, actually, it was one of I can't take any credit for it. One of my earliest podcast guests, Ken Frankel of Three Sigma, said, if you can increase the rate of learning within a company, it wasn't just process improvement, but it was learning. But that's, so similar. You'll just outperform your competition, just
Yeah.
all day long because you're just accelerating at a higher rate than they are.
Yeah. And I think when I came on, like the company was behind the competition when it comes to equipment, processes, software, systems. And now, like, we're having case studies and things done because we're being more innovative, and then we're bringing even more business in because they're like, "Oh, they're doing that as a small business," and I've marketed that we can offer a lot of the capabilities that a larger company can while having the customer service that a small company provides, and kind of
Mhm.
that best of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. Okay. Well, I love hearing that. So I guess bringing it back to the title of this podcast, Manufacturing Transformed, do you feel like ProShop has helped transform MSP Aviation?
Oh, 100%. Like, for almost 2 parts of a decade, they could not figure out why inventory was going up, why they just were not making money, despite revenue and big contracts and everything that would suggest a business is gonna have a great year, and then just they had no way of knowing where things were not going right, and, like, you kind of see it if you walked around, just like, "Oh, that just looks inefficient," and I think, me not having any ties to the industry before kinda gave a fresh look, but, ProShop really gave us so many metrics to make better decisions, comes with a good business model outside of like, right out of the box, and I think I was so happy to just jump in because I was like, "Yeah, this all makes sense," and I had no baggage to think anything else, but, able to see that, like, purchasing was, being done because, you're having a person write something down and, um, if they're not checking the inventory, if people aren't allocating, like, you mess that up a couple hundred times, that's, hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. So we've been able to just start shutting down our inventory, so now we're operating with less expenses and using things better, and, uh, I really think it has transformed the business, and just, I've been talking to a few people, they're like, "I've never had such a good feeling for the future of MSP than we've had in the last year." So, um we're talking to, our CFO and the machinist, operators, assembly, like, everybody has such a bright opinion of the future of our company, which is I don't think would have been said, before.
Oh man, that is so good. It's so good because it is exactly in line with our mission statement, right?
Yeah,
Um, Building powerful manufacturing software by deeply understanding our clients' challenges in order to meaningfully improve their businesses and in turn their communities.
yeah,
And so, if your employees are feeling more bullish than ever, about the company and their jobs and the prospects of what you're doing there, that there's nothing better than that, as
yeah.
far as what we're trying to do in the market. So,
Yep.
thank you for sharing that.
Oh, no problem.
That's awesome.
I It's been a absolute game changer for us, and I don't even know if we would have made it through COVID and a lot of the other challenges had we not been able to diagnose those issues when we did.
Right. Okay. Well, Johnny, thank you so much for this. If people want to learn more about your company, where would you direct them?
So you can Google MSP Manufacturing, or on LinkedIn and Facebook. Our URL is just msp-manufacturing.com. And then if you want to reach out to me individually or anything like that, I have a LinkedIn page. So Johnny Goode, and yeah, be more than happy. And if anyone um, wants a opinion of ProShop outside of ProShop, I'm always more than happy to share my perspective. And I think I've walked a few potential customers just through sharing my screen, like what can be done. So
Well, can't thank you enough for that. Yeah, really appreciate the advocacy and coming on today and sharing. And yeah, it's these conversations, which I get to have every 2 weeks, are just so much fun for me because
yeah, I can imagine.
hearing the impact is that's why we started the business to support the manufacturing industry, and it's good to know that it's really happening in a meaningful way for companies like yours. So,
Well, thank you.
all right, Johnny. Well, thank you again for your time, and I'm sure we'll see you before too long at an event or a show or something.
Absolutely. Hey,
All
you
right.
have a great weekend ahead of you.
Cheers.